Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're plunging into a pretty significant political clash. It played out very much in the open, all centered around a major spending bill championed by President Trump.
Yeah, and it wasn't just, the usual suspects in Congress debating it. This time, a really high-profile figure, Elon Musk, jumped right into the middle of it with some, incredibly sharp criticism.
Exactly. So we've gathered a whole range of sources, articles, reports, analyses, all covering this specific moment. The bill itself, the intense reactions, and especially this back and forth between the administration and critics like Musk.
Right. And our goal here is really to unpack it all. What's actually in this bill? Why did Musk call it, a disgusting abomination?
Such strong words. And how did the White House push back? What are they saying to defend it?
And maybe most importantly, what does this whole very public disagreement tell us about the bigger debates happening right now? About government spending, priorities, and maybe the role of people outside of politics influencing things.
That's the mission. Let's dive in.
Okay.
So it really kicks off with this bill. One, the White House was promoting pretty heavily, calling it, I think, a big, beautiful bill.
That was the phrase, yeah.
But it definitely wasn't universally loved. And almost immediately, it ran into this wall of criticism from Elon Musk, which is interesting because didn't he just finish a stint working with the administration on, efficiency and spending cuts?
That's right. And the language he used, it wasn't subtle. According to all the reports, he went on to X, his platform, and just unloaded on the legislation.
Unloaded is right. He called it a disgusting abomination.
That's the quote everyone picked up on. Disgusting abomination.
You don't hear that every day about a major bill.
No, you certainly don't. And he kept going, called it massive, outrageous, and crucially, pork-filled. Implying it's full of wasteful spending.
Pork-filled. Yeah, that's classic political language for waste.
But the real core of his anger, based on his posts and what the articles captured, it came down to the numbers. The impact on the debt.
Right, the deficit and the national debt. What were the figures being thrown around in the reporting? Because I saw a couple of different ones.
Yeah, it gets a little messy there. Different sources, maybe different ways of counting, but the message was the same. A huge increase. Musk himself warned it would massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit.
Okay.
He specifically mentioned or referenced estimates around a $2.5 trillion increase. But some reports linked his comments more to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office projections.
Oh, the official scorekeeper.
Exactly. And their numbers, especially when you factored in making those 2017 tax cuts permanent, which this bill apparently did, they were looking at something closer to $3.8 trillion over 10 years.
So nearly $4 trillion, depending on how you count those tax cuts, it seems.
Right. It looks like how you score those permanent tax cuts makes a big difference, whether you assume they'd happen anyway or if this bill causes that debt.
Yeah.
But honestly, whether it's 2.5 or 3.8 trillion,
it's still a massive number.
It's a massive number. And Musk's bottom line, as reported, was that this saddles Americans with, quote, crushingly unsustainable debt.
And the timing, like we mentioned, is key. He just finished leading that White House office, DOGE, was it? Deficit Optimization and Government Efficiency?
Yeah, the DOGE office. That context is critical. The articles really emphasize that. Musk himself apparently said this bill directly undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
Ouch.
Yeah. And reports mentioned he'd even sort of hinted at his disappointment privately in a CBS News interview just before he went public on X.
And DOGE had some pretty big goals, didn't it? Like finding trillions in savings.
And that's the stated goal, yeah. Find $2 trillion in cuts. Now, the sources noted that what they reportedly achieved during his time was, smaller, maybe $160 billion in cuts identified, around 20,000 federal jobs eliminated.
Still significant, but not quite $2 trillion.
Right. But the contrast is stark, isn't it? You have this mission to cut spending, and then boom, a bill adding trillions in potential debt. For Musk, it must have felt like a complete reversal.
And he didn't just criticize the bill. He went after the people who voted for it pretty directly.
Oh, absolutely. It was quite personal. His post apparently included the line, "Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Wow. That's more than just policy disagreement.
It really is. He's essentially accusing lawmakers, including Republicans who backed the president's bill, of, a moral failing. Knowing something was wrong and doing it anyway.
That's a heavy charge.
And what's really interesting is how quickly those comments found an audience, especially within the Republican Party.
You mean the fiscal conservatives, the ones already worried about spending?
Exactly. It was like Musk just handed them a megaphone or maybe some high-profile validation. The reporting shows several well-known GOP members immediately jumped on board, amplifying his message.
Okay, like who? Who sided with Musk publicly?
Well, a key one was Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky. He was actually one of only 2 House Republicans who voted against the bill.
Ah, so he was already opposed.
Right. And he quickly retweeted Musk's whole tirade with just, "He's right." Simple as that.
And Musk responded.
Yeah, Musk apparently replied back. Simple math. Just reinforcing that for him. The numbers spoke for themselves.
What about the Senate? The bill was headed there next, right? That's where the margins are really tight.
Yep. And you saw Senator Rand Paul, also from Kentucky, known for being very focused on spending and debt.
Yeah?
He came out swinging too.
What did he say?
He was quoted saying, "I agree with Elon. We have both seen the massive waste in government spending, and we know another $5 trillion in debt is a huge mistake. We can and must do better."
Wait, $5 trillion? And now that's another number.
Yeah, it does show how these estimates can vary, maybe based on different assumptions or timeframes, but the core concern is identical, a huge debt increase.
And Paul saying that is significant because didn't Trump criticize him earlier for opposing this bill?
That's what the sources pointed out, yeah. Trump had apparently called out Paul for his opposition. So Paul publicly aligning with Musk after being criticized by the president definitely signals some internal party friction.
So Musk's comments really poured fuel on that fire.
It seems like it. And Senator Mike Lee from Utah, another senator often focused on fiscal issues, he replied directly to Musk, too, saying something like, "The Senate must make this bill better."
So you have this growing chorus of dissent within the GOP, amplified by Musk, right as the bill needs almost every Republican vote in the Senate.
Precisely. And the reports also mentioned Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin was making noise, too, raising concerns about the deficit impact, even suggesting he might not vote for it unless spending was cut way back, like to pre-pandemic levels.
It really shows this isn't just, abstract debate for these guys. It's a real sticking point that could actually derail things.
Absolutely. Musk's intervention definitely seemed to give cover, or maybe just energy, to those already leaning that way on fiscal grounds.
Okay, so that's the criticism side, Musk's broadside, echoed by some key Republicans. But obviously, the administration wasn't just going to sit there and take it. How did they respond?
Well, publicly, they seemed to try and downplay Musk's personal criticism while defending the bill itself pretty strongly.
How so?
The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, her response was described as sort of brushing off or dismissing it. She basically said, look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion.
So kind of a we heard him doesn't matter approach.
Pretty much. And it's sticking to the positive framing. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
Okay, but what about the substance? The massive debt numbers Musk and the others were citing.
Oh, well, that's where it got more aggressive. Reports say Leavitt directly discounted those concerns by actually attacking the credibility of the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office.
Attacking the CBO? That's bold. They're supposed to be the nonpartisan number crunchers.
It is a significant move. According to the reports, she claimed the CBO is historically wrong. She pointed specifically to their forecast for the 2017 Trump tax cuts, alleging the CBO was off by $500 billion.
$500 billion? Wow. So the argument is you can't trust their numbers on this bill either.
That seems to be the implication, yes. And she apparently went even further, questioning the CBO staff's neutrality.
Oh.
Sources reported she alleged that CBO staffers haven't donated to Republican candidates since the year 2000, but have given money to Democrats in every election cycle since then.
So, suggesting a political bias in their analysis.
That was clearly the intended message, based on the reporting, to paint the CBO's negative score for the bill as politically motivated.
Okay, so that's the White House strategy. Defend the bill, dismiss Musk, and discredit the source of the negative numbers. What about Congress? Speaker Mike Johnson got this through the House. How did he react?
Speaker Johnson also pushed back, calling Musk's criticism very disappointing. He was quoted saying, pretty directly, "My friend Elon is terribly wrong."
My friend Elon. Interesting phrasing.
Yeah. And reports said Johnson mentioned he actually spoke with Musk on the phone for over 20 minutes trying to change his mind.
Did he say what arguments he used?
He apparently talked up the bill's achievements, saying it delivered on key campaign promises, included permanent tax and spending cuts. He framed it as a very important first start for fiscal responsibility and felt that Musk was somehow missing all the good stuff in the bill.
And any word from the Senate leadership defending it?
Yeah, Senate Majority Leader John Thune offered a slightly different defense. He suggested Musk might be looking too narrowly at just the CBO's initial deficit number. Thune mentioned a $2.3 trillion figure in some reports covering his comments.
Another number again.
I know it's confusing. But Thune's main point seemed to be that Musk perhaps wasn't factoring in the potential for economic growth spurred by the bill.
The growth will pay for it argument.
That seems to be the idea, yeah, that the tax cuts, the investments, they'd boost the economy enough to generate more revenue and offset some of that predicted debt. Thune also apparently expressed hope Musk would reconsider once he saw more details.
And he reminded people what Republicans ran on.
Exactly. Thune emphasized, look, we promised voters things like extending tax cuts, border security, military investment, energy production. And in his view, this bill delivers on those promises, which justifies the cost.
Okay, so stepping back, this whole thing, it feels bigger than just one bill, doesn't it? A public fight between a president and someone like Elon Musk.
It really does. Multiple reports called it a major public disagreement, a rare and obvious break. And the fact that it is Elon Musk really amps up the significance.
Because he's become such a player in politics lately.
Definitely. The articles pointed that out, his increased political activity, his shift towards supporting right-leaning causes and candidates since around 2022, and maybe more critically, the money.
Right, the donations. How much are we talking about?
Sources covering his political spending noted over $250 million contributed to pro-Trump groups and super PACs. That makes him one of the biggest donors out there.
So when someone who's given that much money and recently advised the administration on the very topic of spending speaks out so forcefully, it carries weight.
It absolutely does. It's not just some random critic. It's a challenge from someone with perceived access and, well, significant financial leverage within the party ecosystem.
The reports framed it as a real challenge to Republican unity, right when they needed unity for the Senate vote.
Exactly. And even though Musk and Trump have disagreed before, sources mentioned things like the Paris Agreement withdrawal or tariffs.
Right, those were policy differences.
Yeah. But this felt different. Attacking a major, just-passed legislative priority. It was described as Musk's most severe split with the president so far.
So for you listening, why does this specific Washington drama matter?
Well, I think it really throws a spotlight on these deep, maybe unresolved tensions inside a major political party. That fundamental tug-of-war between, fiscal hawks wanting to control debt versus others wanting to use government power, spending, tax cuts to achieve policy goals and keep campaign promises.
It forces you to think about those trade-offs.
Yeah. And it also raises big questions about influence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The role of powerful people outside the elected government, people with huge platforms like Musk on X or huge wallets in shaping these really critical debates about the country's budget and direction.
How much should those voices matter? It's a tough question.
It really is, and this situation brings it right to the surface.
So to wrap up, we've got this core conflict. The administration seeing its big, beautiful bill as delivering crucial priorities, making tax cuts permanent.
Clashing directly with this disgusting abomination label from fiscal conservatives like Musk and some GOP lawmakers who are sounding the alarm very loudly about the national debt.
It's kind of the whole fiscal debate in a nutshell, just amplified by these big personalities.
That's a good way to put it.
So as this bill or future ones like it move forward, maybe here's something to think about. How do policymakers and how should we as citizens balance that desire for big policy changes or tax cuts, things proponents say are vital against these really persistent, growing worries about the national debt? Is there a right balance?
And related to that, what role should powerful, non-elected figures ultimately have in steering those decisions? Where do they fit in the democratic process when it comes to the nation's finances?
Definitely complex questions. No easy answers there.
Not at all.
Well, that was the deep dive. Thanks for joining us for this exploration.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.